The idea that we're still considering whether we're in a recession or not is wild to me. When we see these types of data points, though, does it just say, okay, transitory, not transitory? Obviously, there's no definition. Is it 3 months or was it 3 years? Like, what did they mean? But in terms of recession, is this just confirming what kind of the mainstream crowd thinks around 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth? Now you see something like this and you're like, okay, there's pain here now that we're starting to see. And if this trend continues, it's only going to get worse.
Yes and no. Yes, if you wanted to anchor on this and say, aha, therefore we must be in recession, sure, go ahead, be my guest. I continue to look at a compendium of indicators, namely the tightness in the labor market, namely the positive growth we're seeing in consumer spending still on a 3-month annualized basis. We're still growing at 0.6%, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it's certainly not recessionary. You're seeing acceleration in disposable personal income growth, industrial production still compounding at 2.5% on a 3-month annualized basis. None of these types of statistics are indicative of us being in an actual recession. And another point I want to make, I actually made this point in my macro minute today, which is the growing divergence between gross domestic income and gross domestic product. The former being how much money the people in our geography are making relative to the amount of stuff we are producing and selling abroad. And that spread, somewhere around $977 billion now is in the 100th percentile of quarterly data going back to Q1 of 1947. If you look at it on a ratio basis, it's in the 100th percentile of quarterly data going back to 1947. So there's this massive spread between how much money we're making relative to the amount of stuff we're producing, which obviously started, going back to 2020 when we start dumping trillions of dollars into the pockets of consumers and businesses. But the real key takeaway I'm trying to make about this divergence between income and product GDP, which is if you net them out, which is what the NBER, we talked about the NBER a couple months ago, this business cycle dating committee that that defines recessions in the U.S. If the NBER actually averages out GDP and GDI, and then when you average them out from a growth rate perspective, not only are they growing still, it's actually accelerating through the second quarter. So we're very clearly not in recession, from my opinion.